Was it so very long ago when before I knew the dragon? That was in 1975, when I first encountered the concept of a computer game. That was a new concept to me. For me, the computer had always been a tool for scientific calculation. And now, the notion of using it to play, well, that was a fascinating and utterly unconventional concept to me. And so, I decided to begin to acquaint myself with this technology. I had no dream as yet. For me, the dragon still slept. But I wanted to learn. And so I set to work. I started programming a mainframe computer. That was technologically eons ago. Fortran, punched cards, JCL, IBM mainframes. But in the life of one man, it's not so very long ago. And in 1976, I got my first computer game running. A strategy war game on a hex grid. And at the same time, I decided that I was going to get a microcomputer. I wanted to own my own machine. I wanted to understand this technology. So I set to work teaching myself everything I could about TTL and power supplies, LM309K voltage regulators, and 7476JK flip-flops, and the difference between a tantalum and an electrolytic capacitor, and which end of the soldering iron gets hot. And then in January of 1977, I got my first computer, a Chem 1 single-board microcomputer with a 6502 processor, 1K of RAM, and I was set. And you know, within 1 month, I had got that thing hooked up and running. I had learned a code in 6502 machine code, and I had written a game and gotten it working in 1K of RAM, a little strategy war game on a hex grid. And then like all microcomputer hobbyists, I started expanding my system and expanding my game. And then, in 1978, I bought my first appliance computer, Commodore PET, with 8K of RAM. And in the same year, I sold my first commercial computer game. That was in 1978, 15 years ago. It's been a long time. In 1979, I joined Atari, did a game on the video computer system. Then I went to work on the Atari 800, because this was the premier graphics and sound machine of the industry. The 800 was so far ahead of everything else, it was the machine to learn on. And I knew nothing about graphics and sound. So I hurled myself into the machine, absorbing everything I could, learning all about graphics and sound. Some of you may find it ironic to learn that for a time there I was known as the graphics wizard of Atari. And indeed, there was a period of time there where my game, Eastern Front, was the most graphically advanced product on the marketplace. Because that was a phase I needed to go through. I needed to understand graphics at a deep level. I needed to feel that I had a good grip on it. And so all through this period, from 1975 to 1981, for 6 years, I was apprenticing myself to this technology. I was turning it over and over in my hands. I was getting the feel of it in my fingertips. And for 6 years, I had no dream at all. All I did was learn. By 1981, I felt that I understood the technology. I felt that I knew what this medium was about, but I had no dream. I couldn't see the dragon, but by 1981, I could hear him thrashing about in the forest. I knew he was out there somewhere. I knew he was big, whatever he was, and I wanted to find him. And then, in one of those fortuitous circumstances that is so perfectly timed, that we can only ascribe its occurrence to the workings of fate. Then Alan Kay came into my life. Alan had been hired at Atari to form a corporate research group. And first thing he did when he got to Atari was he asked around to see if there were any angry young Turks who were possibly in danger of leaving the company. And every finger pointed. Okay, I'll take your job, Alan. So I went to work in corporate research. And then is its equivalent of being marooned on a desert island, whose Maryland was rough. Alan and I talked about all kinds of things, and I learned so much from him. You know, some of you may have noticed over the years that I tend to have a fairly generous assessment of my own talents. You don't have to laugh that loud. And of course, correspondingly ungenerous assessments of other people's talents. Let me tell you this. Alan Kay is so much smarter than I am, I feel stupid when I'm talking to him. I mean, most other people, when they think, they go in little tiny steps. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Alan doesn't work that way. He goes in big leaps. A, J, M, R, Q. And boy, if you want to keep up with Alan when he's talking, you got to run along behind him, filling in the blanks. B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O. And it's hard. You have to work to keep up with this guy. I used to walk out of meetings with him saying, Alan, I can't take it anymore. I got to go back to my office and stare at the wall for a while. So I learned a tremendous amount from Alan. But, you know, the tricky thing is, most of what I learned were the blanks that I filled in. And it's impossible to say whether the blanks that I filled in were blanks that he intended for me to fill in, or blanks that just came from my own experience.